Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. I've been really busy lately. My family actually just got back from our annual 4th of July trip to southern Minnesota, where both my wife and my families are from. We grew up about 20 miles apart from each other, but we never met until college. So came back with a lot of really cool footage from the tree farm that I was hoping to get cut into a video for this week, but I just didn't quite get it done, and to be honest, it is really good footage, and I want to do it justice. So I didn't feel like just slapping it together and throwing it out. So I'm going to do a better job with it and get it out next week. So make sure you come back and check that one out. So I figured this was the perfect opportunity to finally get around to giving you that shop tour that I keep talking about doing. Now my shop is not set up for workflow. A lot of people talk about how they need to go from one tool to the next tool to the next tool, and I don't have that option in here. My shop is set up to work around obstacles. So we're going to do a lap around here just to show you what the obstacles are, and then we'll look a little bit more at the tools and the layout and stuff like that. But first of all, let's take a look at what I've got for doors. So I've got two people-sized doors. I've got the single that goes out to the garage, and then I have the single that goes forward into the yard and then to the house. And then besides that, there is a set of double doors that goes out to the driveway. All of these are kind of nice to have, but they eat up wall space like crazy. And then you can also see I've got a big wood-burning stove in the corner here and a firewood cradle. That's just a junk cradle right now. But between that door, the fireplace, and the double doors, I lose about 20% of my wall space in just that. Now the other thing that this double door does is there's a ramp that goes up from the shop floor level to the outside level, and it is actually about 8 by 4 foot. So that is a full-size sheet of plywood of floor space that I really can't do anything with because it's all sloped. Another obstacle that I have to deal with is this big post almost in the middle of my floor. Now that hoist on top is really handy when I need to move heavy stuff around or hang things, but it's kind of a pain to have to contend with the positioning of it. As you can see, I've got my two biggest pieces sandwiched around that post right now, and this seems to be the best layout that I've got so far. If you've seen some of my older videos, I had my table saw up against that far wall, and I just never really liked the way that worked, and this is working out a lot better. Another big obstacle that I have to contend with is this great big hole in the floor. I'm not exactly sure what its purpose ever was, but I've just got a piece of plywood over the top of it, and so it's not really good for setting any weight on, and it's not very stable. I end up standing on this board a lot, but I don't set any tools on it. Now the other obstacles are all of the windows in here. There's a little window up behind the fireplace, which isn't bad because I can't get to that space anyway. There's a little window behind those shelves, which I've just covered up because I had no need for it. And then there's a giant window there, a giant window there, and then that's a full 4 by 8 foot window behind that piece of cardboard. So all of that is wall space that I can't use because somebody wanted daylight. And it's really nice in the daytime if you want to be able to just see, but it's actually really hard for filming to try to balance all of that outside light with camera white balance and the internal lighting that I have. So anyway, that's really about all of the obstacles that I had to find a way to get around in here. And I know it kind of sounds like I'm complaining, but it has been very tricky to find the right setup for all of this stuff because of those things. So now I'm going to kind of show you what my solution to all that is. Starting next to the door to the garage, I've got my nice old drill press. This is actually a Jet with a Craftsman motor. It's a variable speed motor. This is a really, really nice piece of equipment that my grandpa had in his shop that he actually gave me about a year ago when I was getting more and more into this woodworking stuff. I've got a French cleat system full of some of the most used bits that I've got in the back, and then I have a bunch of other bits in a drawer and shelf thing on the bottom. Then I've got my workbench that's just sort of a space to do stuff on and to store a bunch of junk mostly. There's way too much junk on the top that doesn't really even need to be in here, but I don't have a better home for it. Then I've got a Craftsman tool chest that's got a kind of a cross between wrenches and mechanics. It's got kind of a cross between mechanics type stuff and some woodworking tools. And I've got all my finishing supplies here, my sanders, my finishes. A lot of them are in the house because the temperature is just more stable in there, so I don't bring them out here unless I really need them to. Got some clamps stored back there behind the Craftsman chest. It's not the most convenient place for them, but it's not too bad either. Got a little bit more clamp storage up there too. Every time I get a chance, I buy some more clamps because I just, you know, everybody knows you can't have too many clamps, and it seems like I'm always a couple short when I need them. Now moving over a step, I've got my combination belt and disc sander. This was also given to me by my grandpa. It's really convenient to have. You may have seen the video I made where I use it. I made a jig to use it to sharpen my turning tools. It's negated the need for me to have a bench grinder at this point. And then the bench that it's sitting on used to be twice as long, but I had to cut it in half to make room for my radial arm saw. So now this bench is sort of the right side support for materials going onto this older DeWalt radial arm saw that I got actually from a neighbor just down the street who was having a rummage sale. On top of that saw is where I keep my earmuffs and my eye protection so that they're always in the same place and they're always easy to get to. So moving over from the radial arm saw, you can see my new lathe and the lathe stand that I made in a pretty recent video. One thing that I didn't show in there was the plan I had for a bit of dust collection built into that. This hose is very expandable, and it's the one that I actually use to pull out to the middle of the room for my planer that's on the flip-top workbench. Now all I have to do is plug that hose into the end of this PVC pipe, and I have it supported by some cable straps there, so I'm able to move it back and forth and tip it up and down and position it just where I need it to be. It's a little floppy, but it gets the job done and keeps things a little bit cleaner. Now past the lathe, we have the door to the outside and to my front yard, and then up against this wall I've got my jet bandsaw, which I've got a couple of videos on it too. Then past the bandsaw, we've got my jet drum sander, which is just fantastic. This was the first really nice new tool I ever bought for myself, and I am still just tickled with it. The only complaint I could say I have is that I put casters on the bottom of it and those feet are rather flimsy, and I tried to roll it over a cord by accident once, and the whole thing just about dumped onto the floor because the little tab bent over on me. So I've since straightened out those tabs, and I put metal brackets connecting each of the feet together, and then I could put a shelf on top. So now it's rock solid and it's a lot safer. It's not going to fall on me anymore. So behind the drum sander is a Harbor Freight dust collection system, which has worked really well for me, but I don't like how big and ugly it is, and I don't like dealing with replacing that plastic bag, especially since it's really expensive once you start punching too many holes in it. So I'm about half done putting together a dust separator barrel using Rockler's dust separator kit. This basically turns that bucket into a cyclone type dust separator, and it makes it a lot easier to empty the dust. So from there you can see the big double doors, and then we've got my old shop vac, which I still use a lot with its cyclone dust separator and the dust box on the bottom. And then we're back to the sticker door that goes out to the garage, so then we can go out there next. Here you can see my new jet metal lathe that I picked up while I was back home in Minnesota. My dad actually took my grandpa's really old and really nice Craftsman metal lathe, and his new jet lathe needed a home, so I claimed it. I don't think it's going to stay here once I get my dust separator thing set up and get some space back. I'm hoping to get it back into that corner, but for now it just needs to sit here until I get that worked out. So behind this is a bunch of junk storage that nobody really cares about, and my wife's car. And then on the other side is usually where I park my truck, but right now it's got the trailer in it because the trailer is still full of all the lumber that I got while I was back home. There's some really nice stuff in here. It's just a kind of a combination of walnut and ash and cherry and oak and some maple in there. And I'm needing to figure out how I'm going to store all of this, but I also need to get it unloaded and just get my trailer back out of this garage. Over there I've got my lumber rack, which is going to be way too small for this amount of stuff that I just got. And I got a couple more tools that I picked up from cleaning out my grandpa's house, so I don't know where these are going to go yet, but they'll find a home just like everything does. And then up against this wall, which would be up against the front of my truck essentially, is where I usually store what little sheet goods I keep on hand. I don't tend to store a lot of this stuff, I just have to go out and buy it as I need it. Now if I don't have enough room for it there, I actually clamp it to the wall that separates the two sides of the garage. So, anyway, that's pretty much a look at everything that goes on back here in the garage part of things. I don't tend to work out here much unless I really need a lot of space to break stuff down. Then I'll come out here and set up some sawhorses, and you've probably seen me do that in the past. So that's the quick and dirty tour around my shop. I'm sure I didn't cover everything. I just tried to get through it real quick and give you a general overview of what I've got going on here. If you noticed anything in the background, or if you have any more specific questions about the way it is or why it is the way it is, go ahead and leave me a comment and I'll happily answer you. If I get enough questions like that, I might do a follow-up video to go in more depth on things that people actually want to know about, because doing something like this, I don't really know what people want to know about, so it's just a guess for me. Anyway, definitely make sure you check out next week's video, because I'm going to have just a fantastic pile of footage of doing some tree farming back home. A friend of mine came down from the cities and he brought his drone along, and it just looks spectacular. I have never seen my farm look like that before. So anyway, thanks for checking this out. Leave me your comments. I'll get back to you, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.